My brother stood up at my father's 70th birthday dinner, tapped his fork against a glass, and said, "Before we celebrate Dad, maybe Ella should explain where the missing money went." The room went quiet in that careful way people go quiet when they are embarrassed for you, but still curious enough to keep listening. My mother looked down at her napkin. She did not defend me. She did not even look surprised. There were 42 people in the back room of the Riverside Grill that night. Church friends, old neighbors, two of my father's former employees, my Aunt Ruth from Ohio, and a few people my brother had invited, because he liked having an audience. I remember the small things. The butter was too hard to spread. The air conditioning vent above table 3 was rattling. My father's birthday cake was sitting on a silver cart near the kitchen door, covered in plastic wrap, with one candle already leaning slightly to the left. And I remember my hands. They were resting flat on my lap, not shaking, not gripping anything, just flat. My name is Ella Mercer. I was 36 years old that night. If you have ever sat in a room while your own family acted like they were telling the truth about you, comment the word steady. Not because it fixes anything, just because sometimes it helps to know who else understands that kind of silence. My brother Grant smiled when he said it. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the accusation, the smile. He had practiced it. I could tell. Grant always practiced cruelty when he knew other people would be watching. He was 40, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who wore expensive watches with casual shirts and said things like, "I'm just being honest," whenever he wanted permission to be unkind. My mother, Denise Mercer, sat beside him in a cream blouse and pearl earrings. She looked like every photograph she had ever chosen of herself. Soft, polished, untouched by anything messy. My father sat at the head of the table in his navy jacket, looking smaller than he used to. A stroke 2 years earlier had taken some strength from his right side and most of the speed from his speech, but it had not taken his mind. That mattered later. At that moment, though, he just looked at me. Not confused, not angry, just tired. Grant raised his glass a little higher. "Dad worked 45 years for what he had," he said. "And while some of us have been trying to protect him, others have been quietly helping themselves." A woman near the window whispered, "Oh my goodness." I did not turn toward her. My mother finally lifted her eyes. "Grant," she said softly, like she was trying to stop him, but she was not trying to stop him. She was giving the performance its shape. Grant looked at me. "Ella, if I'm wrong, say it. Tell everyone why Dad's care account is nearly empty." I picked up my water glass and took one small sip. Then I set it down. "I'm not going to discuss Dad's finances at his birthday dinner," I said. Grant laughed once. "There it is," he said, avoiding the question. My mother placed her hand over his wrist. "Maybe not tonight," she said it gently, regretfully, like this was painful for her too. That was my mother's gift. She could hold the knife and still look like the person asking everyone else to stop bleeding on the tablecloth. I looked at my father again. He moved his left hand slightly toward his jacket pocket. No one noticed but me. I knew what was in that pocket because I had put it there an hour earlier. A folded copy of a notarized statement, 3 bank dates highlighted in blue, 1 signature circled in black. Grant thought he had brought me into that room unprepared. He had no idea I had been quiet for 7 months on purpose. He had no idea the woman sitting at table 6 in a gray cardigan was not one of Aunt Ruth's friends. He had no idea the retired bank manager near the door had driven 2 hours to be there because he still remembered the day my mother signed my name. And he had no idea my father had asked me one clear question in a rehabilitation room 7 months earlier. "Ella," he had said slowly, fighting for every word, "why did your mother say you sold the house?" That was where the real story began. Not at the birthday dinner. The dinner was just where Grant finally said the lie out loud, in front of enough people for it to stop belonging to him. My parents owned a hardware store for 38 years in a small town outside Asheville. Mercer Hardware sat between a barber shop and a pharmacy, on a street with uneven sidewalks and flower baskets hanging from black poles in summer. I grew up in that store. I knew the smell of sawdust, key blanks, raincoats, motor oil, and old cardboard, better than I knew perfume. My father, Paul Mercer, could fix almost anything. He was not a loud man, but people trusted him. They brought him broken lamps, stuck windows, old hinges, strange screws in plastic bags. He would turn the pieces over in his palm and listen before answering. My mother handled the front counter until she decided the store looked better, with younger women smiling at customers. That was how she said it. Your father needs someone with energy up there. By then, I was in college studying accounting. Grant was supposed to take over the store someday, but Grant never liked work that did not come with applause. He liked the idea of being a local businessman. He liked shaking hands at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast. He liked telling people, "Dad and I are expanding." He did not like inventory, payroll, leaking roofs, tax deadlines, employee disputes, or customers who returned things without receipts. So for years, while everyone thought Grant was learning the business, I was the one cleaning up the parts that could actually ruin it. I did not announce that. I just did it. When I was 27, I found 3 unpaid vendor invoices inside an old filing cabinet. When I was 29, I caught a payroll tax error before it became a penalty. When I was 31, I spent 6 weekends rebuilding the store's bookkeeping system because Grant had been entering cash sales under the wrong category for almost a year. My father knew. He never made a speech about it, but he knew. He would leave a cup of coffee beside my laptop on Sunday mornings and say, "Just because." That was his way. My mother hated it. Not openly. Open hatred would have made her look ugly, and my mother could not tolerate looking ugly. She used smaller tools. At family dinners, she would say, "Ella is very good with numbers. It's a shame she never wanted anything more social." Or, "Grant has the people skills. Ella has the spreadsheets." Everyone laughed, because it sounded harmless. I laughed too sometimes. That is one of the strange things about growing up inside a family story. At first you repeat your lines because you do not know there are other lines available. By 33, I was working as a compliance analyst for a regional hospital network. It was not glamorous. I reviewed contracts, purchasing records, vendor relationships, and policy violations. I noticed patterns other people missed because I had been trained by my family to notice what was not being said. Grant was selling commercial equipment by then and calling himself a consultant. My mother told everyone he was between ventures, which sounded much better than what he was, which was chronically rescued. Then my father had his stroke. It happened on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. He was in the back room of the store, checking a delivery of snow shovels that had arrived too early. A part-time employee named Luis found him on the floor beside the loading door. I got the call at 9:18. My mother called Grant first. Grant did not answer. Then she called me. At the hospital, she stood in the hallway with her purse clutched against her chest, saying, "I cannot do this. I cannot handle medical things." So I handled them. I spoke with the neurologist. I wrote down medication names. I learned the difference between inpatient rehab and skilled nursing care. I printed forms. I called insurance. I sat beside my father when his speech was still broken and his right hand would not close around a spoon. Grant arrived 6 hours later with coffee for himself. He hugged my mother in the hallway and said, "We'll figure it out." Then he asked me where to park. For the next year, my life became a sequence of forms: insurance forms, rehab forms, power of attorney forms, store payroll forms, medication schedules, physical therapy invoices. My mother cried in public and disappeared in private. Grant gave dramatic updates to relatives and missed actual appointments. I became the person everyone called when something needed to be done, but no one wanted to do it. I did not mind taking care of my father. I want to be clear about that. I minded being treated like the help, while my brother was treated like the heir. 6 months after the stroke, my mother asked me to come by the house on a Sunday afternoon. She had set out tea, which meant she wanted something. Grant was already there. He was sitting in my father's recliner, with one ankle crossed over his knee, scrolling through his phone. My father was asleep in the bedroom. My mother folded her hands. "Your father and I have been talking," she said. That was the first lie. My father was barely speaking in full sentences then, and she had stopped asking him anything that required more than a nod. We think Grant should officially manage the house and store matters, she continued. Just to keep things simple. I looked at Grant. He did not look up from his phone. What does simple mean? I asked. My mother's mouth tightened. Ella, please don't make this difficult. You have your own career. Grant understands the community. The vendors know him. The vendors knew him because they were calling me about late payments. But I did not say that. I asked, what paperwork are you asking Dad to sign? My mother gave a small laugh. There it is, always paperwork with you. Grant finally looked up. Mom is asking you to not turn this into an audit. I remember exactly how the room looked when he said that. Afternoon light across the carpet. My father's walker near the hallway. A glass of water on the side table, with a straw bent toward the chair where he no longer sat. I should have understood it earlier. That was the first time they were afraid of what I could read. Over the next few months, I was pushed out politely. Appointments changed without telling me. Bank letters stopped coming to my email. My mother said my father got anxious when too many people discussed finances. Grant told relatives I was controlling and struggling to let go. I let the words move around me, not because they did not hurt, because I had already learned that defending yourself inside a dishonest family is like mopping a floor while the sink is still overflowing. Then, in February, my father called me from the rehabilitation center. His voice was slow, but clear enough. Ella, he said, why did your mother say you sold the house? I was sitting in my car, outside work, still holding my badge in my hand. What house, Dad? Our house, he said. I closed my eyes. The steering wheel was cold under my fingers. I didn't sell anything. There was a long pause. Then he said, I didn't think so. That sentence changed everything. I drove to the county records office the next morning before work. I wore a black coat and brought a folder because I knew, somehow, that I would need somewhere to put whatever I found. The house had not been sold. It had been used as collateral. A home equity line of credit had been opened 4 months earlier for $180,000. My father's signature was on the paperwork. So was mine. Except it was not mine. I stood at the public terminal and stared at my name. Ella J. Mercer. The J was wrong. I never used my middle initial. My brother did. He always thought details made things look official. I printed the documents. Then I drove to my office, closed the door, and sat at my desk for 11 minutes before I moved again. That was the moment I stopped being hurt and started being exact. Over the next 7 months, I gathered what I needed. I did not confront them. I did not call Grant screaming. I did not accuse my mother. I requested records. Quietly, properly. I obtained copies from the bank. I matched dates. I requested visitor logs from the rehabilitation center because my father had supposedly signed one document on a day he had been in occupational therapy from 10 to 11:30. The notary stamp was timed 10:45. The rehabilitation center had camera logs. The bank had a retired branch manager named Mr. Alvarez who remembered my mother because she had insisted the paperwork was urgent and because, in his words later, something about the daughter's signature bothered me. The daughter meant me. He had written a note in the file. Signature inconsistent with prior records. Wife says daughter authorized by phone. No one had called me. Then I found the care account. My father's long-term care account was supposed to hold the proceeds from selling a small lot behind the store. $92,000. Enough to cover private therapy, home modifications, and part-time nursing help. By the time I found the statements, less than $6,000 remained. There were transfers to Grant's business account, payments to a luxury car lease, a check written to my mother's decorator, and one cashier's check for $38,000 used as a deposit on a mountain cabin Grant had been telling people was an investment for the family. I printed everything. I labeled every page. I made 3 copies. One went to my attorney. One went to Adult Protective Services. One went into a blue folder I kept in my apartment freezer inside a plastic bread bag because I had watched too many disaster planning videos and because I no longer trusted normal places. In August, my mother started calling more often. Her voice changed. It became sweet in a way that made my skin alert. "Your father's birthday is coming," she said. "We want everyone together." By everyone, she meant an audience. The dinner was Grant's idea. Riverside Grill, private room, printed invitations, a slideshow of old family photographs where Grant appeared in every third image, and I appeared mostly in the background, holding something useful. I knew what they were planning 3 weeks before the dinner, because my Aunt Ruth called me from Ohio. "Your mother says there's been tension about money," she said carefully. I was at my kitchen table sorting pharmacy receipts. "What kind of tension?" Aunt Ruth sighed. "She said you misunderstood your role after the stroke. She said Grant may need to speak honestly before things get worse." There it was. The public concern. The loving ambush. I looked at the blue folder on the table. Then I looked at the small ceramic mug my father had given me when I graduated college. It said, in chipped black letters, "Measure twice." He had written the second half on the card. "Cut once." That became the sentence I repeated to myself for the next 3 weeks. Measure twice. Cut once. I invited Mr. Alvarez to the birthday dinner. I told him he did not have to come, but that my father would be present, and the people who had used his name would be present too. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'll be there." The woman at table 6 was named Nora Patel. She worked in elder financial investigations for the county. She had already opened a review. She came because my father requested her presence in writing. That was important. My father requested it, not me. By then, he was speaking better. Slowly, but better. I had visited him twice a week all summer. We practiced statements like we practiced physical therapy, one sentence at a time. No drama, no extra words, just the truth. On the night of the dinner, I arrived early. My mother had placed me at the far end of the second table, beside my cousin's teenage son, and a woman from church who sold candles. Grant sat beside my father. My mother sat on the other side. The message was clear. I was family, but not central. Useful, but not trusted. Present, but already judged. I put my purse under my chair and said nothing. Mr. Alvarez arrived at 6:12 and stood near the bar with a glass of water. Nora Patel arrived at 6:18 and sat at table 6. My father watched both of them enter. His left hand rested on the arm of his chair. At 7:04, after the salads were cleared, Grant stood. That is where I began. The fork against the glass. The smile. The accusation. "Before we celebrate Dad, maybe Ella should explain where the missing money went." He thought I would defend myself. That was the role he had written for me. Angry daughter. Difficult sister. Emotional woman with paperwork no one wanted to read. Instead, I took one sip of water and said, "I'm not going to discuss Dad's finances at his birthday dinner." That made him bolder. Cruel people often mistake restraint for fear. Grant reached under his chair and pulled out a folder of his own. Black, expensive looking, empty of anything useful, as it turned out. "I have copies," he said. My mother whispered, "Grant, please." Again, not stopping him, framing him. He opened the folder and held up a bank statement. "Care account," he said, nearly empty. Ella had access. That part was technically true. I had access until they removed me. Grant looked around the room. She handled Dad's medical paperwork. She handled reimbursements. She handled the store accounts for years. We trusted her. There it was. We trusted her. I felt something in the room lean toward him. Not because people believed him completely. Because people like a simple story. And Grant had given them one. Responsible son exposes controlling daughter. My father moved his left hand toward his jacket pocket. I stood then. Not quickly. I pushed back my chair and stood with both hands lightly on the table. "Dad," I said, "do you want to answer this first?" My mother's head turned sharply. Grant blinked. The room changed before anyone spoke. Because no one had expected me to give my father the floor, my father took the folded paper from his jacket pocket. His hand trembled, but not enough to stop him. I walked to him, but I did not take it from him. I only unfolded it and placed it flat on the table in front of him. He read slowly. My name is Paul Mercer. I did not authorize my daughter Ella to take money from my care account. I did not authorize my son Grant to use my care money for his business, car lease, or property deposit. I did not knowingly sign a home equity loan in February. I asked Ella to get help when I learned my house had been used without my understanding. He stopped. The room was completely still. Then he added, not from the paper. Ella helped me. 2 words. That was all. But my father had built his whole life on fixing things with the fewest movements possible. Those 2 words did what my explanations never could have done. My mother stood halfway. Paul, you're confused. Nora Patel rose from table 6. Mrs. Mercer, she said calmly, I would be careful about suggesting your husband is confused in a room full of witnesses after he has provided a notarized statement and passed a capacity screening last month. My mother sat down. She did not know Nora. That was clear on her face. Grant tried to laugh. Who is this? Nora did not answer him. Mr. Alvarez stepped forward from near the door. I can answer part of that, he said. I'm Samuel Alvarez. I managed the Northridge branch for 22 years. I was present when the home equity line was opened. Grant's face changed, not collapsed, not yet, but changed. Mr. Alvarez held a small folder. I made a note at the time, he continued. The signature for Ella Mercer did not match the signature card we had on file from prior store accounts. I was told by Mrs. Mercer that Ella had authorized the signing by phone. That was not acceptable procedure, and I should have stopped the process. I have already provided a statement to the investigator. People were no longer leaning toward Grant. They were leaning away from him. It is a small movement, but you can feel it. A room deciding it has been lied to. Grant looked at me then, really looked. For the first time that night, he understood I had not come to argue. I had come measured. My mother's voice went thin. This is a family matter. I looked at her. No, I said. It became a legal matter when my name was signed. Grant slammed his folder shut. You set this up? I nodded once. Yes, that answer bothered him more than denial would have. I continued, still not raising my voice. You accused me publicly. So the correction needed witnesses. My Aunt Ruth covered her mouth with one hand. The candle woman beside my empty chair stared at the tablecloth. My father closed his eyes, not in weakness, in relief. I looked at Grant. You told people Dad's care account was empty because of me. The records show transfers to your business account, your vehicle lease, and the cabin deposit. You told Mom I would be too embarrassed to fight you in public. You were wrong about that, my mother whispered. Ella, stop. I almost did. Not because she deserved it, because some part of me was still trained to obey the sound of her disappointment. Then my father placed his left hand on the paper. Not much, just enough. Measure twice, cut once. I turned back to the room. I have given the records to the proper people. I'm not asking anyone here to punish anyone. I'm asking you to stop repeating a story you never checked. That was the end of my speech. It was not dramatic. It was not long. But after I sat down, no one spoke for almost 15 seconds. Then my father's old employee, Luis, stood near the back wall. He raised his glass slightly. To Paul, he said, and to the daughter who stayed. No one clapped. It was not that kind of moment. But glasses lifted, quietly, one by one. Grant left before the cake was cut. My mother followed him, but not immediately. She waited long enough to gather her purse and touch my father's shoulder. He moved his shoulder away. That was the only time I saw her truly lose her face. Not cry, not scream, just lose the expression she had worn for everyone else. The fallout was not instant, because real consequences rarely arrive like thunder. They arrive as envelopes, phone calls, short emails, meetings where people no longer smile the same way. The bank froze further draws on the home equity line within the week. Grant's business account was reviewed. The cabin purchase fell apart. His commercial equipment partners requested documentation he could not provide. 2 months later, he closed the office he had rented, mostly for appearances. My mother called me 37 times in the first 10 days. I answered once. She said, "You humiliated your brother." I said, "Grant accused me of stealing from Dad in a room full of people." She said, "You could have handled it privately." I remember looking out my kitchen window when she said that. A squirrel was sitting on the fence with something in its mouth. The world was continuing in the ordinary way it does when your life finally stops pretending. "I did handle it privately," I said. "For 7 months. Then he chose the room." She went quiet. Then she said the sentence I think she had been saving for me my whole life. "You always think being right makes you good." I waited before answering. "No," I said. But lying to protect Grant made all of us worse. I hung up. My father moved into a 1-story rental 6 minutes from my apartment, while the house issue was sorted out. I took him to therapy on Wednesdays. We ate soup afterward at a small diner where the waitress called him Mr. Paul and brought him extra crackers without asking. One afternoon, about 3 months after the dinner, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. Not a large one, enough to make a point. "What is this?" I asked. He said, "Back pay." I shook my head. He tapped the table once. "Ella." So I took it. Not because I needed the money, because he needed to give it. My relationship with my mother did not heal. That is not the kind of ending this is. She sent a letter through my Aunt Ruth around Christmas. It was 3 pages long, and mostly about how hard the stroke had been on her. She used the word mistakes once. She used the word sorry twice. Neither sentence said what she had done. I put the letter in a drawer. I did not answer it. Grant sent one text after the investigation began. "Hope you're happy." I read it while standing in line at the pharmacy for my father's blood pressure medication. Then I deleted it. Happiness had nothing to do with it. Peace did. There is a difference. The store was sold the following spring to Luis and his wife, through a clean agreement my father understood and approved. On the last day, I helped empty the back office. In the bottom drawer of the old metal desk, I found a stack of notebooks. My father's handwriting filled the pages. Measurements, vendor numbers, repair notes, little reminders. On the inside cover of one notebook, he had written my name. "Ella knows where everything is." I sat on the office floor and held that notebook for a long time. For years, my family had treated me like the person standing just outside the photograph, the one holding the bag, carrying the folder, remembering the appointment, fixing the number, absorbing the blame. But my father had known, quietly, imperfectly. Late, but he had known. Now, on Sunday mornings, he comes to my apartment for breakfast. He moves slowly, and he still drops things sometimes, and he gets frustrated when words take too long. I make coffee. He reads the paper. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we do not. There is a blue folder in my filing cabinet now. Not in the freezer anymore. I do not need to hide proof inside a bread bag to feel safe. The mug he gave me sits beside my sink. Measure twice, cut once. I used to think that sentence was about caution. Now I think it is about dignity. Do not swing wildly. Do not beg dishonest people to understand you. Do not waste your whole voice in rooms designed to misunderstand it. Measure what is true. Measure it again. Then make the cleanest cut you can. My brother wanted that birthday dinner to become the night everyone finally doubted me. Instead, it became the night my father got his voice back. And so did I.